The first step is to find the center line of the tail block and the neck block. These are going to be what's joining the sides together primarily. So here I'm drawing a vertical line, or a straight line from each corner of the block, making an X, and then drawing a straight line through the dot of the X that'll find you the center line. So the guitar comes with two cardboard pieces that you're supposed to cut out and glue together with some wood, and that forms the inner guitar mold. For me, it just was not working out. I could not get the sides together properly, so I ended up having to buy a mold.
All right.
Here I'm starting to assemble the sides together, first with a dry fit inside the mold. A couple of things to consider is that you want the top of the guitar facing downwards, and you want the back of the guitar on top. This is because the back has a radius to it, and the top is relatively flat. So you'll see I placed a couple of 2x4s on top of the back side just to make sure everything's flat and even and aligned when you glue the sides together. Another thing to consider is that make sure the neck block, make sure that the dovetail joint is opening towards the top of the neck. And then the other thing I noticed is that the sides where they meet are not perfectly matched from the factory. And this is, I think, by design, because ultimately you will be cutting out both seams on both ends. The top, you'll be cutting out the dovetail joint, and the bottom will be cutting out the seam and inlaying a stripe of aesthetic binding. I've also placed some pieces of wax paper in between the seams and the mold, just so that any glue spill out won't join the two together. You'll also notice that the neck block and tail block jut out from the back of the guitar by quite a bit, maybe like half an inch. And I was a little bit concerned about that at first, but I learned ultimately that's going to be cut off and sanded flush to the kerfing. All right, time for the rosette. This is the aesthetic binding that's kind of inlaid around the sound hole. And the triple O comes with 3 rosettes, and only the most inner one needs to be completed as a full circle. The other 2 won't meet, and they'll be covered over by the fretboard. You're going to have to cut the inner rosette down to match the circle circumference. And so to do that, you just kind of draw a diagonal line where the 2 ends should meet. And then with a chisel, you just cut off the rosette and try to fit it in there. The other thing is that the rosettes come really rough and unfinished. The binding channel is also not perfectly cut, so you'll have to do a lot of sanding and finagling to try to get these pieces in there. And once again, use some wax paper between the rosette and the caul to make sure the spill out doesn't stick to anything. And the last part here is just to use a card scraper to scrape off the excess binding, or rather the rosette, and make everything relatively flat. Don't worry about any glue stains or anything like that, because the ultimate finishing will happen later. Alright, thanks for watching. That's it for this episode. Next time we'll be tackling the top and the top bracing. See you next time.